Joining me now, Sabrina Siddiqui, politics reporter for the Huffington Post. So, Sabrina, I want to start with on the Republican side, the sort of absolute blanket denial of climate change, at least on the side of their media and sort of their thinkers. Take a listen to Charles Krauthammer discussing global warming.
It's the oldest superstition around. It was in the Old Testament. It's in the rain dance of Native Americans. If you sin, the skies will not cooperate. This is quite superstitious, and I'm waiting for science which doesn't declare itself definitive, but is otherwise convincing.
I mean, comparing the science of global warming, which is near universal among actual scientists, to rain dancing and superstition. Is this a broad view among elected Republicans, and is this why we can't get anything done on climate change in Congress?
I don't think it's necessarily a broad view among elected Republicans in Congress. Privately, I think they know that they have to address climate change sooner or later. The biggest problem facing Republicans is that if they publicly accept that climate change is a reality, then they're going to have to put forward proposals to deal with it, or they're going to have to endorse some of what the Obama administration is already doing. And a lot of the proposals to combat climate change entail taxing and regulating the coal, oil, and gas industries. These are industries that Republicans are heavily aligned with. They're not only their biggest allies, but also some of their biggest donors. So they don't want to be at odds with groups like the Koch brothers. And then at the same time, there's the conservative base that you mentioned, who simply believe that climate change is a myth, and they liken any energy efficiency standards to government overreach.
And you know what? And what's interesting, as you said, that it isn't universal, because John Huntsman, who Republicans by and large don't listen to, but who is very smart and wise on some of these issues. This is what he had to say in a New York Times op-ed on Wednesday. He said, "Our approach as a party, Republicans, should be one of neither denial nor extremism. Science must guide sensible policy discussions that will lead to well-informed choices, which may mean considering unexpected alternatives." Aren't inspiring much confidence, especially among millennials who want at least an intelligent conversation on the subject. Where are those Republicans on Capitol Hill who are arguing at least to not look silly by, comparing science to sort of mythology in the most demeaning but not really convincing way?
Well, I think that the reason they don't speak out is sort of a testament to the continued influence of the Tea Party and that conservative base that simply doesn't believe in climate change. I think the Tea Party is really driving the opposition to climate change among elected Republicans. And, it's interesting because they are currently debating an energy efficiency bill in the Senate. It's the Shaheen-Portman bill that would create not mandatory standards, but voluntary standards for people to incorporate into their homes, as well as commercial buildings. And Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid actually agree on this bill. A lot of Republicans support it, but what's happening is that there's a conservative faction of Republicans who want to see a vote on unrelated amendments that would actually do the opposite of deal with climate change. They would protect the coal industry, for example, by blocking new EPA regulations against the coal industry, as well as force the approval of the Keystone Pipeline, which also has some serious climate concerns that, of course, have been talked about.
And it's interesting that you mentioned sort of the nexus between kind of the fossil fuel industry and the Tea Party, because there is a funding relationship, there's an ideological relationship. And what that's resulted in, of course, is very stratified polling. I'll let you take a look at this Pew poll from October, which showed 84% of Democrats believe in global warming, only 46% of Republicans. But when you break that latter figure down into Tea Party versus non-Tea Party, only 25% of Tea Partiers believe in global warming. 70%, almost as many Dems as believe it, don't believe in it. And among non-Tea Party, it's 61% who say, yes, we believe in climate change. With the Tea Party growing more unpopular even within the Republican Party, becoming a smaller faction, I guess, but no less vocal, is there a chance that as you see it, this year for sort of the regular order Republicans to prevail on doing anything at all when it comes to climate change?
I certainly don't think anything is going to happen this year. It's a midterm election year, and we learned today that the Koch brothers are poised to spend $125 million this year helping elect Republicans to Congress. And their primary source of wealth is, of course, as a big oil corporation. So this is not the year for Republicans, even those sensible ones, to stand up and try to work with Democrats on combating climate change. I will say that, as with many issues that the Tea Party is very vocal and passionate about, it appears that climate change has become less about what some of these elected Republicans actually think with respect to the science, and more just taking an ideological stand against climate change. Yeah. It's sort of like abortion almost. We've seen this slew of anti-abortion legislation related to fetal pain that completely ignores the science behind fetal pain, and a lot of moderate Republicans have been forced to back such measures. And I think climate change is kind of similar. They privately know that the science is real, but publicly they still are concerned with primaries, and they still are concerned with appeasing to that conservative base.
Yeah, and that leaves the White House really to do executive action. I mean, the White House has put back on the solar panels that were there during the Carter era, and you do have sort of executive action now emerging out of the Obama administration because, you know, should these natural disasters continue to happen and escalate because of global warming, they're the ones who have to deal with it. They've got to send FEMA to sometimes these very red states that don't even believe in the science behind what's happening to them.
Absolutely. I think the Obama administration, for that reason, has designated this a year of action because they're just going to have to bypass Congress, at least in terms of taking a few incremental steps on energy efficiency. Like I said, the energy efficiency bill is the most non-controversial piece of legislation that we've seen in a while in the Senate, and yet it's about to be subject to Republican filibuster on Monday. There were going to be enough votes initially for it to clear a procedural hurdle, but because wants to force a vote to protect the coal industry as well as to force the approval of Keystone, he's apparently privately peeled off some of the Republican support for that bill. So it really seems like with the gridlock in Washington, the Obama administration has no choice but to take matters into their own hands.
Yeah, they can't even get energy-efficient light bulbs. It's just ridiculous. Anyway, Sabrina Siddiqui from the Huffington Post, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Joy.
All right, coming up.